You want to sit here? You're fine. Okay, let's call the meeting to order of the Mass Transit Commission, the city of Monona. 6 p.m. on the 21st. You have the roll.
Everybody's here. Except for
Everybody's
Doug.
here. Except for Doug, yep.
He was
and we-
planning last night.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll jump in. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from November 8th and
I don't have the 12th. I just realized it.
December 13th? I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? I have a second. Are there any changes, corrections? No? We're good. All those in favor say aye. Votes are approved.
So just on Sean's minutes.
Yes. Sean, thank you for being here tonight. Everyone. Appreciate it, and I appreciate all the work that you put into thinking through the routes and the stops.
Thank you.
We'll move on. We have no unfinished business. We'll move on to new business, discussion of the route and bus stops with Madison Metro. So, you all should have received the maps.
Just so just so everybody knows, there's kind of three things in here. One is the original map. We have the current routes.
So we started.
Yeah, that basically went down Fenric, Cots, the Dutch Mill, and then back. And then just one little change we'll talk about later too. If you go by, this is the old map where it says C3, the name has actually changed. So I'm looking at this map right here.
Yeah.
So there will be another change they're gonna be talking about too is up by Buckeye. Instead of going down Davis, they just want to go straight up on Drive. So that's included in here. We'll get to that point. They asked about that change if that's possible. So we're running through here. So that's kind of the original. So the next page is this Google map. Jump up in here. So this, we talked about the Femrite and it was asked, try to give us an alternative route. I know Justin, they've been really trying to figure this out. The best they can do it. This is what they sent us. Just so you know, it is about $10,000 more. It was one of the things they brought up because it is additional. If you can just kind of look at the map, just going from Femrite down, it's a shorter distance, so there is a little bit of additional distance and time that's related to this, so that's where that little bit is. So that would be part of the team. So we're kind of like Sean, if you want to talk about it.
Well, why don't we
Oh, you
get
guys,
through,
yeah.
no, why don't you get through the three things that we have in front of us and then we'll go,
Yeah.
then we'll go back to stuff.
And then the last page, the last one. Got it in twice. So if you can notice, it's called the 38 now.
That's what it used to be.
Yeah. So if you look at again at Buckeye, so instead of going to Davis, Cottage Grove, it just keeps on going from there to downtown. So that was a little bit of the change there. So.
Okay.
But this doesn't reflect that other $10,000.
Right, not right now. So it's kind of going with what was originally kind of approved.
Okay, all right.
And then, once it takes a map. If it would approve.
Mark, couple of questions because I missed a little bit of that not being in the room. So I want to make sure that the $10,000 change is based on going up Femrite back down to Monona Drive and then turning right to head north on Monona Drive.
So if you're
Or
coming
sorry.
down, you come down Monona Drive, goes all the way down to Broadway, and then over
Okay.
Broadway up and the Taylor, and then.
Yep.
Then it hits Femrite, and then back to the normal portions, and then back again.
Got it. So that's the little jog we're talking about is the $10,000 change.
Yes.
And then I see you also mentioned it is not a typo. It is now called the 38 route.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
one that's, they said it's called the 38 now.
As opposed to C3. C stays the same, but 38 would be the one that's specific to Monona. Is that what you're saying, Sean?
Yes,
Got
yes. So, yeah, it's as someone mentioned, it is kind of the 28 and 38 are kind of becoming their old routes again. The 38 used to come down Turner, so now this would change it and to come through Monona. One benefit over the C3 that the Monona has is that it serves campus a little bit better. It goes up Observatory Drive instead of Old University. Also, recently we extended Route 38 down to University Row, which includes places like Hilldale, which have been a pretty popular destination. So not only could with the former C3, it stopped at the hospital. Now this continues west a little further. It's a little bit faster, as Mark was mentioning, because it doesn't do that little Buckeye to Davies deviation. So it's kind of going in a more logical route that's a little bit faster. And that little jog does, one of the really great benefits of that little jog is that it gets people to Metro Market. I do remember last year talking to some folks that were interested in going to Metro Market. So now they'll be able, depending on where they're going, of course, they could either have the option of the G or this 38 to get to Metro Market. So,
Right.
So yeah, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. I'm mostly here to answer questions. So
Yeah.
go ahead if you have any.
Thank you. Why don't we I'm gonna recommend that we concentrate on this southern piece first. Through, Clinton, because that's really the only piece that hasn't been approved by the city council. And I mean, the city council, when they approved a resolution, was very aware that we were still working on that very southern piece. I was very clear in the meeting and for precisely the reasons that Sean just mentioned, which is we know we wanted to get closer to Ahuska and we wanted to get closer to Metro Mart. And had suggested turning at Monona Drive. So I know, Sean, I have a question. First of all, I was joking with Mark before the meeting started that I spent the afternoon on Google Maps measuring out a whole bunch of stops. I know that your gold standard in terms of stops is to not be any further than a half mile apart. The idea being that nobody has to walk more than a quarter of a mile. And that is a gold standard because basically past that, the overhead becomes too much and people don't take the bus. So, I mean, it's diminishing returns, right? The farther apart the bus stops are. So I was particularly interested in like the stretch on Femrite between Enna Taylor and Monona Drive, where we don't have a bus now because of this change. And also the stretch between Enna Taylor and Pops. And so just for the commission's standpoint, Cops to Enna Taylor is 0.696 miles. Which makes it longer than the half mile, which is exactly why there's a stop proposed on Shalo, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is for different safety reasons, signalized crossings and things.
Right,
We're trying to avoid a situation where someone scrambles across an unsignalized crossing. Also, I do want to point out that this is our initial draft that we had our staff and some of the people that are engineers that work for us look at these things. We could always add stops in later. Some of them just required, we felt some kind of significant infrastructure to make them safe. And that it can be subjective.
right. Got it. So just for the, like I said, Cops to Enna Taylor is the 696, which is higher between the two stops than they would ordinarily like. But there's, you'll see that there's also a stop proposed, that's the little dot on Shadow. So that would be, that stretch between Enna Taylor and Cops would work, and then Monona Drive to Enna Taylor on Femrite is actually 0.432. It looks longer, but it's actually 0.432, which is less than a half mile. And people could walk to either the Enna Taylor stop or go up to Femrite at Monona Drive to get the bus. So even though that looks longer, according to Google Maps, when it's measured out, that's where it came to. So that piece of it, you know, is us, and I should also tell everybody here that I have spoken to Public Works. And I also spoke to our police chief. And he had a concern. Particularly, our police chief, I should say, Public Works basically was, we'll do whatever you wanna do, you know, I mean, Dan is,
Yeah.
you know. He didn't see any problems with the route, our police chief, the only question mark that he had on the entire route, including Winnequa. The only question mark that he had was on Femrite. Hi Doug.
Sorry, Doug.
Hi.
And his question on Femrite related to the hill. As you know, Femrite rises up to Monona Drive or goes down off of Monona Drive. His concern there is that the sight lines, particularly for the bus, if the bus is going up on Femrite. And obviously needs to stop at Monona Drive. If you, for those of us that drive Monona Drive, you probably don't know this, but as you go up that hill. There are times, including in the winter when there's snow piles on that corner. Where you can't see the car very well that's sitting at the corner of Femrite and Monona wanting to pull out into Monona Drive. I think that would be less obviously with a bus, because they're much higher. But nonetheless, when a bus on a hill like that goes to pull out onto Monona Drive, when they're on a hill and they go to pull out, you know, they're gonna be pulling out at a slower pace than a passenger car would. And so the thinking was, with all the traffic that's coming up Monona Drive, between the sight lines. And the fact that the bus is slower and people could be barreling up to go up that hill on Monona Drive. That he saw that as potentially dangerous, and I don't wanna say dangerous, that's probably overstating it. He just thought we ought to take a look at that. Didn't think that that was necessarily the best option because of that hill. And he also said that when the buses don't have a lot of passengers on hills. They can be. They can slide. If they don't have a lot of passengers, and so in Madison, as an example, on all the hills in Madison, they lay extra salt down. Anywhere in Madison where they have significant hills, so that the buses don't, you know, so that things melt and buses don't slide as much. But he said his experience was that, you know, on hills it can be a little bit more challenging. So he wasn't saying that we can't use Monona Drive, that we can't use Femrite. But he was saying particularly exiting from Femrite, going west on Femrite and exiting onto Monona Drive, he wouldn't advise.
So
Honestly, that made me
that was the old
nervous.
alignment.
Yeah.
We're not doing that turn anymore, actually, so.
Yeah.
If you go to the last, so that was originally on the plan, but we have it turning on Enna Taylor and then coming up Broadway to Monona, so there is no Femrite to Monona connection.
Right, I understand that, but the commission, I wanted to make sure that they understood why, one of the reasons why I think that this new drawing that you gave us actually works better. Is precisely because it does address what the chief was worried about.
How far is the stuff from the On Femrate, because it's not going all the way on Femrate from the place where I,
How far is it from what?
And that
to
Totally.
get there, to get to Aldo Leopold by bus, you'd get off.
From in the Taylor?
That's it. From where
How
you
far
would
is it?
stop at Monona Drive or the.
No, then it's not going on Femrate.
Well, but it goes on to Enna Taylor, and Enna Taylor's right next to Alva.
Okay.
I think you're just asking what the walk would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, I just don't know the streets as well as you guys do, and the Taylor is very close to Aldo Leopold.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
back up to each other.
Leopold, or Old Tail is the dog park. That's that street.
I just remember how happy Aldo, the people at that center
I
were.
totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was one of my concerns too, but I think that, again, looking at the distances, Enna Taylor literally backs up to the Aldo Leopold
Oh,
property.
Fantastic.
And they're contiguous, I mean, they butt each other.
Mhm.
And so the walk there, I think, is very reasonable to Aldo Leopold.
Good.
And I also heard from a couple of people who live in this area, on this side of, who do take the bus. Bill Graff, who's a resident here in Monona, as an example, he takes it all the time. And he saw this new map and thought it made total sense, to him. So I told him that we were working on it. And not to mention the fact that we get to, to Madison, to Metro. So it looks, Sean, it looks like though that you're proposing stops like right at the corner, when you're stopping at a four-way stop like at Monona Drive with, and you have a bus stop there. Knowing that that's one of the more highly trafficked areas, how do you pull that off?
Just so you guys all know the bus stop on this.
Yeah, if you want to talk about like, hey, can this bus stop move 10 feet up and down the street? I don't really have the materials for that. We definitely have folks now, we have a new capital projects department at Metro that does this now. So that would be Tim Sabota and Mike Chekvala. So getting into the details of that, they're both very smart people that really know what they're doing, that totally understand the issues of safety and near side versus far side and sight lines and things like that. I'm definitely not the right person to show, like I said, like the engineering drawings of the
Oh,
stop.
no, I wasn't expecting engineering drawing. I was just thinking more generally when you're at a 4-lane. 4 traffic light stop like that. I was just curious how the bus fits in, but but not to worry.
Oh, yeah, it's a combination of, can we put an ADA accessible pad down? Does it have sight lines? If the bus had to sit there for a wheelchair, is it safe? This is certainly something that, the rest of our service area, we look at and we're very experienced with, so. Certainly, once we get a little bit closer to the actual stops and when we're working with your public works department, we can get a little bit more into detail there, but, yeah, I can't say that all this stuff has definitely been thought about.
Okay.
One thing I noted, well, 2 observations on this map that I just want to say I'm really happy to see. First of all, is I went through and I overlaid the B-Cycle bike rental stops where they are throughout our community, and this is hitting them, including the stop that's at the beach across from the ice cream place, right next to your house, Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be able to get that overlay, that overlap of these 2 pretty great pedestrian, cyclist friendly pieces of infrastructure. So I'm really excited to see that, because we're going to hit the stop at Buck and Honey's, we're going to hit the stop at the beach, we're going to hit the stop out in front of Crema Cafe. I'm really glad to see that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is on the map that I'm looking at, I don't see any stops on Winnequa, but there's also an overlay that says 38 on Winnequa. And I just wanted to ask explicitly, are there stops on Winnequa?
So, like I was saying before, this is something that our staff put together. I think we had some issues too with public property and sidewalks on Winnequa. And so our capital folks didn't elect to put any stops there.
No, sorry.
Certainly, we could work on that too. They just seem to be a little bit more problematic compared to some other locations in Madison where we've tried to put stops like that.
Thanks for clarifying. I was just making sure that the 38 label of the route on what I'm looking at wasn't covering up stops beneath. Thank you.
Yeah.
Those are my
Just
two
one-
things.
One follow-up quick, they talked about in the future, the mayor has, about putting sidewalks on that, would that soon make a difference if there's a stop right on it?
Oh, certainly. I mean, a lot of it, you're purchasing the service from Metro, so it's really up to you. But yeah, in general, we kind of grandfather in some of our older areas that don't have sidewalks, but in general, I mean, obviously it's great to have sidewalks when you have transit service, but there is kind of some limited areas there, and that's going to take quite some time to do that. And so, in the future, I mean, we can always have adding infill stops. We had that stop there on Broadway and the Taylor that didn't quite have the infrastructure we felt to include it. But yeah, as this kind of builds up and starts building ridership, that's definitely something to look into, kind of adding some infill stops here and there. And yeah, not too many because you do want the bus to kind of stay on time, but that's certainly something you could add in.
Right, and I did, for the commission's point, standpoint, I did measure Winnequa between Dee and Nichols, and it is less than a half mile. So, it does meet without a stop, it does meet the gold standard, if you will, because it means that anybody that's on Winnequa doesn't have to walk more than a quarter of a mile to get to the stop.
Right.
So, so it's 10,000 to go back to this new, what do other people think about this new route on, the southern piece that we were working on? What do people think? Doug, since you, came late, what Mark was explaining and Sean was explaining before I think you got on was that this new route that they're proposing for the southern part from the Park and Ride or from Monona Drive, where they use Cops and the Taylor and skip using Femrite on that western side there, it will be an additional $10,000.
Seems it's like a very important goal of ours to serve that area, so
Yeah,
no problem.
okay. So what do other people think? Are we thumbs up with that piece?
It seems like the supermarket access is a consistent theme, and I also was very nervous about the bus going up the hill, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, feel personally allayed.
That we're not using Femrite.
Also, just like Lily's daycare teachers race across Monona Drive over there, right over by that hill because they live over by Edna Taylor, and it scares me thinking of the bus turning up that big hill with the sight lines with people coming across the street there, even though there's no crosswalk, so yes, I'm in
Looks
favor.
good. Okay. Great.
I like it too. I like it too.
Okay, I think we have a winner. Addie, I'm assuming, are you a thumbs up on? Much better, good. All right, so that still keeps us within budget, does it not?
Yeah, it's still.
That's encouraging too.
Any other changes to Buckeye change? I assume that's.
Is excellent.
Yeah.
For
it just
a
makes
bus
it
rider.
easier to get down.
Yes, that's
I
good.
don't know, Doug, you were here for that portion. There was a change up by Buckeye and Davis, instead of going to Davis to Cottage Grove, just keeps on going on Monona Drive to downtown.
So it'll be shorter going downtown. Oh, Doug's decided to lay down on us. There you go. Oh,
So what exactly is changing here?
So here, it used to go down Buckeye up this street and then down Cottage, so it's taking an extra loop rather than just going straight up.
Thank you.
What is the budget again? How much has it been budgeted for? Well,
I don't have to look at me. Getting all the numbers mixed together, I know.
So the other piece that in terms of these stops, the other piece that I looked at, you know, there was some suggestion that, there was some concern that some of the residents that live closer to Monona Drive, like if you, like for instance, you know, Schofield, which goes by IHM. You know, that there would be residents there that would need to take the bus. We don't know for sure. But just for kicks, I drove that myself and then I also did the measurements today. And, you know, if you stand in the middle of IHM on the sidewalk at IHM at Schofield, and you go south to the Pheasant Hill stop, it's 0.3 miles. As opposed to 0.25, so it is slightly more than the gold standard of a quarter of a mile. But in my view, still very reachable, and if you go IHM to the north, to the Gordon stop, it's also 0.3. Slightly more than the gold standard, so I'm not seeing that as an issue, and obviously, as we've talked about all along, being able to go deeper into Monona more generally was a higher priority for us. So, but I just thought I would check that out. And then the other thing that Doug, that you may have missed from coming a little bit late is that one of the things that has changed, and Sean, I would be curious to know if you guys, if this matters, although I think it does mean that the Buckeye change you made is a good one. We have a number of people that used to in the sort of southern half, if you will, of Monona that used to go down to Broadway. Grab the bus and go directly downtown on John Nolan, and they were lamenting to me just last night in election night party, actually, that that they were sorry to see that, and I, you know, explained to them that you know, the G route is not of our making, you know, and that's not our focus. But I do think that means, for the commission's sake, I do think that makes the dip or the turn at Owen. Because there's been other suggestions from the community since, you know, we proved this, that, you know, why don't we just go down Nichols and skip Owen and Pheasant Hill altogether? But I think that makes the dip at Owen even more important, because it reaches, in terms of that quarter mile gold standards, it reaches more people in that lower quadrant, if you will, now that bus doesn't go around John Nolan, and that the fastest way to get downtown for people is gonna be to either go to the corner of Broadway and not even go, or walk up to Owen and grab it there. And
Yeah, I want to chime in agreement on that point too, because my house is kind of on that walkway between the kind of more southern communities, and right now folks are walking through my neighborhood to go all the way up to Walgreens at Flom at Monona Drive to catch a bus to go uptown. As the fastest route for that southern part of Monona. So I agree with you, Nancy, a lot that coming into that corner at Owen and Pheasant Hill, I think is going to be readily accessible to a lot of folks down in the southern part of Monona to get uptown rather quickly. I see him walking through my neighborhood a lot.
Right. Great. Good feedback. Thank you. So, do we have any other questions about the stops that have been posed, or any questions for Sean?
Yeah, I did have one more stop that I wanted to ask about. It's when the bus is headed north on Monona Drive and turns left onto Owen. I know we've done that turn and we're able to make that turn. And I'm just wondering, can you give me a little bit more understanding of where that stop is as you're heading currently westbound on Owen? Where that stop is. Is it Ken's? Is it Heritage? Is it across from the post office? Can you be a little more specific, Sean, about where that one is? Because it seems with the medians and the traffic coming through at Owen with Ken's and Fraboni's and now Fratelli's being very successful businesses, just thinking about traffic coming in and out through that bottleneck.
Yeah, because it
Yeah,
looks
so-
like three, are you saying that it looks like three different dots there? Some apply to L and others apply to 38. Is that where you're looking at, where there's three dots right at that same intersection where there's those businesses? Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, so one of the issues is that since it needs to make that left, it needs to get in the left turn lane, and so it can't serve a curbside stop. I'm not sure exactly where it would be. I thought it would be somewhere next to Heritage, probably past Ken's. And that's just a function of all those driveway aprons. We just need to put in a stop after those driveway aprons so we don't block anything.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, because that intersection is always a little hairy. I go through it frequently.
Mhm.
And also, as I'm understanding it, if you're heading outbound on the 38, the stops are on Pheasant Hill before turning left onto Owen. And then there is a stop as the bus turns right to go south on Monona Drive. There's a turn on Monona Drive there. Is that how that is?
Yeah, I think some of that, some of this is, so we have to balance stops that are close to each other for transfers, stops that are safe, and then stops wherever we can kind of fit one in.
Yeah, it's a weird
that,
intersection.
like I said, I unfortunately, I don't have the detailed drawings of exactly where that would go, but in that, the plan is in that general area. You also ideally want to have as many shared stops as possible. So if you throw a stop up there on Monona Drive and you want to go to Metro Market, you can get either the 38 or the G. Having as many shared stops to shared destinations as possible. But that's not always possible. So you can see there is that just north of Owen on Monona Drive, that will be a G stop that it won't be able to be served by the 38 because it'll have to get in the left turn lane to get there. So yeah, I mean, as long as the general area everyone's okay with, we can definitely give you more details. But we certainly, these aren't just drawn up because it looks nice for spacing and stuff. We looked at the curbs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, Addie, just to go back to your question, because I drive Owen quite a bit too, I think there's actually between Heritage and Monona Hills, there actually seems to be a pretty good spot where you would be past the median and past the crazy of Ken's and past the post office.
Yeah.
But before the church and that other turn, and so that, to me, that seems like a logical spot somewhere in there, right? To Sean's point about getting out of the fray, if you will, of Monona Drive and Owen before they have a stop.
Yeah, and I think the confusion will come up is that as I'm reading the map, there isn't going to be another stop on the other side of Monona Drive headed outbound. So we're not going to get a stop in front of Fraboni's or in front of the post office. It looks like what's going to happen in order to line up the stops with the G and the 38, that the bus is going to head all the way to Monona Drive there and turn heading south. Well, there'll be a combined stop probably in front of the Eagle Tavern for both the 38 and the G, which I think is great.
It's a nail on the head there. Yeah, I mean, the issue is, yeah, the sidewalks in that area. Pre 1990, we could throw up a stick in the mud and call it a bus stop, but it's getting harder to do that with the.
So that area too would probably be redeveloped, that bowling area in the next.
Yeah,
5
the bowling
years.
alley will be.
Yeah.
There'd be a big chunk, so I don't, that could probably. With the curve cuts and stuff too.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Sean?
Not related to the route and the stops necessarily, but there is still the outstanding issue of weekend paratransit coverage. Is that on the agenda for today, or is that something that's resolved and I'm just lost?
There is almost there's a very small section of the city that's not covered by the G, but the G runs 365 days, every 30 minutes. And so that would be the vast majority of your paratransit coverage. There is a tiny bit of it, kind of near the Tecumseh Park. So there's only a handful of houses that wouldn't be served. The rest of the city, you would get with your regular G service.
I'll send you a map, Addie. We had a map of that.
Yeah, there's a donut hole there, and that's what, and Sean, and what we talked about. Is that, you know, it would be far cheaper at this point and probably not just cost effective, but not knowing that whether or not we even have paratransit in that donut hole. It would make more sense, honestly, to like, if we, you know, maybe we could hook up, and I don't know, Sean, if this is something that other communities have done, because you said there are other places like in Madison and other places where there's donut holes like this. And so, and hopefully that donut hole will go away, right? You guys are hoping that eventually maybe the feds will ease up a little bit and.
It's a little bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of, so we have a mandate, which is the 3/4 miles, and then past that, it's kind of getting into a different category that's if it's not related to fixed route. And if anything is an example, City of Sun Prairie did ask for their entire city to be covered, even if it's not near the bus. And we kind of explained this issue and they withdrew that request. So that's kind of what's been happening. And as far as the city of Madison goes, that's kind of a larger discussion where we kind of need to identify a new funding source to do something like that. It's just
Right. So what we had talked about is a possibility, Addie, or we meeting, you know, I talked about it with the mayor and we were thinking if we can identify who those houses are, we could mail something to those houses specifically and say if at any juncture, you know, you apply for paratransit that we want to know and potentially, you know, we could get, or we would like their approval to reach out to paratransit to keep an eye on their houses so that if there was an application where somebody, and where somebody gets approved for paratransit or they're using paratransit during the week and then all of a sudden they can't use it on the weekends, because of that donut hole, that it would be cheaper for the city, honestly, to arrange for like an Uber when they need it on the weekend instead of creating a whole different route on the weekends. So in other words, we're not leaving them high and dry.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not the expert on this too, but I know that Dane County also has resources when we have other neighborhoods that are similar to like this in Madison, and we kind of refer them to some Dane County resources too, so.
Yeah, and then really, because we do have paratransit, because everybody would have paratransit during the week with the 38
Mhm.
being here. That, you know, I'm assuming that the people that have paratransit, you know, their first priority during the week would be that they want to go to appointments and friends or whatever, work or whatever during the week, where paratransit would be really critical. It's not to say they don't need it on the weekends, and we certainly want to accommodate that. So we'll, one way or another, we're committed to accommodating that.
Thanks for the updates, you guys. I know it's kind of a sticky wicket, and I'm glad we're doing what we can because the expansion of paratransit service during the week and the access for almost all of the households in Monona on the weekend, I think is a really, really important step for us to make, and I'm glad we're making it. Thanks, guys.
A number of Medicare Advantage plans, like mine, 24 rides a year to any medical.
Great,
You just tell them you need a ride and they take you.
Great.
Right.
great,
So, I mean, there are
I
other
think it's
aspects
less
as well.
yeah,
I think Diane does.
Like,
the senior
great,
center. She has-
Right, she knows
she
about
knows
some of
about
those.
it.
right. Any other questions for Sean?
Sean, just two sidelights here. Why was the name change from C3 to 38 was to avoid confusion with the other C routes?
Couple of things. So first of all, it's going to be a branch off the existing 38. So that was done. So we looked into the C3 and basically the route that you guys wanted would mean that it would need a whole nother bus. That bus would be parked at the end of the line for a good half hour, just the way how the math works. So it made the math work a little bit better, I would say.
Okay.
And it avoids that little kink there at Davies. It's just a faster route. And so it kind of just fit in a little bit better to how the math works when we're scheduling service as well.
And second question, there are bus routes on Park Street, right? So if people
Oh, yeah.
want to get downtown that way.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, if they wanted to, you could take the G to the B, which is going to be, the B is going to be our new north-south BRT. But yeah, before people were walking down to Flom and having to take the G and then connect. The 38 is going to be the sacred one-seat ride to downtown. So I think that's going to be a pretty big deal for folks that especially if you're going outside of where your existing Monona Express runs. So this will be able to run the middays as well, one-seat ride downtown.
Would it be possible to include that in future iterations of this map, just so people know that that's not an open?
You're talking about
The B, north,
B.
south.
you're talking about. that
Oh,
branch.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, we have
Route
tons of
we
routes.
just mentioned.
But yes.
Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah, just so it doesn't mislead people to think that it's not a viable route to downtown.
Yeah, I know that there was a couple of folks that were going to Park Street on the old route, so I think that is important. I think we can throw up the B there too.
Thank you.
Is that rapid transit ready to go?
The rapid transit, that's a larger discussion.
No comment.
So if these are our stops, and obviously some of these are already stops here in Monona. But if these are our stops, how soon, or, might we know the actual timing of those stops?
Well, some of them are, I'm not sure exactly where the jurisdiction ends. So, a good example is Sun Prairie. They just added a lot of service. So we gave them suggestions about where to put it. We did a little bit of the engineering work. They had their public works department do it. So it's kind of, it kind of depends on you guys. Certainly, when we have impacts to certain stops, or if you need to close something for construction, you'll kind of have to fit back into our kind of existing network right now. I know we already did that a little bit when you guys have the fire parade and things like that, but so the actual building of the stops we can help with, but we only build stops in the city of Madison.
Oh,
Oh, I wasn't
did you
talking
mean
about the building. I just need the
timetable, like
timing
bus
of the
schedule,
routes.
Like it leaves, it'll be at this stop at 7:05 and this
Oh,
one at
yeah.
7:21.
The schedule. So yeah,
Yeah.
so
That's
we'll
what I
have
was
that-
referring to.
Yeah, the next step actually for these stops is coming up with good time points. So time points are a place where the bus can wait if it's running early. So you want to have them spaced out pretty well. They're the what's are published in the schedule. Google goes ahead and estimates at every stop when the stop is coming, but that's actually just for public information. So we'll the next step kind of then is figuring out which of these stops are time points, which would be published in the schedule, and we need to make sure that the bus could stop there. So there are several places in Madison where we would love to have a time point where two routes meet, but it's not safe for the bus to wait there if it's running early. So that's kind of the next step too of when we schedule it out, which stops are the time points. And so that's something that it's kind of the next steps after everyone's okay with this change on Femrite and things. We can draft up some time points. I'm sure my staff has some ideas.
Okay, so then the time points would be, that's one thing, that's where they can stop if they're running early. But then to go to my original question and Jillian's follow-up, when then would we know? For instance, if somebody is hopping on at the corner of Dean and Monona Drive, how long is it anticipating that it's gonna take you to get downtown? You know, like our community's asking how much longer or how fast is it gonna be, et cetera. So it really kind of, it'd be nice to know the actual schedule estimates at this point.
And I have an older before, so the route has changed a little bit. So I can update, I have an older diagram kind of our estimated times for those for each stop. It doesn't have this new route with some of the last minute changes, so I have that information and I can share that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, I know that it's subject to change, you know, but I think it would be helpful and I know we're not, you know, this isn't gonna happen next week. It's gonna take a while to figure out the rest of this. We're, you know, managing the expectations of our community in terms of saying we're probably, between your work and our work as a community, we're probably not gonna be looking, we're probably looking at the fourth quarter. You know, at the earliest, right, for this, so, but it would be helpful to get those, so that's terrific. Any other questions?
Yeah, I would just add in as we're thinking about time points, for me, I think one of the most important places that hopefully we can identify as a time point is the bus stop that's in front of the library, the pool, the city center. One, I think convenience sake, I know half of that, at least we already have a bus pull out. But as for, you know, somebody who's looking down the current schedule and going, I need to go vote, or I want to go pick up my library books. That place seems to be a really, really good fit. But I'd also say that unfortunately, you know, you're looking for a spot where the bus can sit and idle, which is probably not on Broadway or on Monona Drive. But having one of those stops at Metro Market, if it's possible, would be wonderful, because that's another one of those places. Because what I hear from a lot of my friends that ride the bus is that abstraction that Google does about when the bus is at the stop causes a lot of headaches for people. You know, it says the bus was supposed to be here at 5:33, but it was actually, the stop was 5:25, 2 miles back, and it went past. So, I mean, the milestones that seem to be important seem to be the city center and the Metro Market, and of course Dutch Mill Park and Ride.
Yeah.
So I hope we can figure out a way to get a stop, a time point near there, so that people have that reassurance and knowledge if I can catch the bus at, you know, 5:25 p.m. if I'm standing there.
Yeah, I mean, we found not a lot of folks are looking at old schedules and doing a couple minutes differently. They're just typing it into their phone, and yeah, Google does those estimated times. Yeah, I mean, this route, yeah, there is ways for it to get late and things like that on the way there too. So sometimes the real time is more interesting than the actual printed schedule. But yeah, that's something that we can look at too, for certain time points. But yeah, that safety issue of the bus having to wait there a little bit, we kind of sometimes don't get our way as far as certain time points. There's certainly other places in Madison where I would love a time point to be. There's just not enough space for, in some cases, there's two buses that need to pull up. Yeah.
University at Midvale, I think, being the number one headache in my
Yeah,
life.
that we can't really hold there, and that's gonna be a platform, that's gonna be a whole other thing, but yeah. But yeah, there's certain places where we would love to have one where two buses meet where it's just not safe to hold it, so. We can definitely, the next step is the time points for sure.
Okay. Fantastic.
I remember we asked this question earlier, but it was quite a while ago and maybe things have changed, but you used to be able to keep count of people who got on the bus. And there was going to be a point when you could start counting people when they get off the bus. But that wasn't going to happen for a while, but maybe you know better what the timeline for that is.
Yeah, so right now we're doing a test fleet of, so they're called APCs, automatic person counters. It's kind of like when you go into a store and you hear a ring. It's just like a little brake beam that you walk through and it helps us count things. That is not going to be done until about the end of the year for all of the buses. So that will give us a lot more information about, especially the offs. Right now, we don't have a real good way of looking at offs, but yeah, I've been looking at different ridership by partner in ways that we haven't in the past. And once we have more data, we'll certainly share it with you.
And do you report those numbers like monthly or how is that accessed?
So there's kind of more details of that. We actually have to get those counters certified by the federal government first, and then we will be reporting it monthly. Right now, all our information comes out of our fare boxes. So that is reported monthly, but it's not broken out. It's just total.
Okay. And you say the end of the year, but who knows when the bus for us will start? It might be around that time or,
Be good timing.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too. So we start up service at our different driver pick dates, which is a union thing.
Yeah.
Where we change service 4 times a year. So that would be the end of the Q4 would be December. So
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
and we did read that you guys are going to the equivalent of like a debit card or whatever for fares, which is fantastic. It's
yeah, it's a
gonna be
long
so
time
much
coming.
easier.
Yeah, everyone has their little mag strip cards that they gotta whip out and they get all soggy. And yeah, it's gonna be great to have a real modern smart card. We're a little behind there, but we're coming up with that.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions for Sean before we let him go? No, Doug, you're good? Okay, Sean, thank you so much for coming tonight. It was super helpful.
Thank
as
you.
always.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Looking
I
forward to
wanted to
working
thank
with
you
you.
guys for kind of rolling with the punches with this 38 change. I think it helps us out a lot. We were gonna have about a half of a bus that was gonna be parked half the time, so I'm really, really glad that this happened.
Good deal.
Looks good.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right.
So. Do we have anything else to discuss tonight on this route for our next step? Is to go to contract, which we're hoping to do within the next month.
Or 30 days. So,
Yeah,
he's as much as he, I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
we're working.
So I mean, they've, as you can imagine, Metro has a standard contract.
Right.
And as you can imagine, the contract, has a clause in it that basically, the contract doesn't outline every street and every stop and all of that. It's a generic, contract, which a schedule is attached to, or whatever is attached to, but as with any contracts, within X number of days notice, either party can make a change in a route or schedule or whatever, to enable us to adjust as we need to. And for Metro to be able to adjust, obviously, if we need to. So, there's a whole thing in there about how changes are made. So it's not, because otherwise we'd have to send it, write a new contract every time. They move the stop or every time they tweak the route and we know, that's up to happen. So that's the next step.
And they're attorneys, so attorneys are.
The attorneys are getting their money, yeah. Yeah, I would also tell you that, Walter Brian Holmquist took transit to the Public Safety Commission with a recommendation of his to tweak the route and basically they wanted to think on it at least another month. I think they were kind of surprised to see it in front of them. Because it's kind of not a typical thing. And I had already talked to the chief of police and the director of public works, which is the typical thing, so, but I don't anticipate anything. That public safety only has responsibility for public safety. Like, they don't have the authority to change the route, all they can do, is refer anything back to us or, and nor do they have the authority to work on any of the infrastructure. That's Public Works that works on the infrastructure. So, so I'm not anticipating that there's anything material to what we do as a commission coming out of that. But I'll keep this group apprised. As that proceeds. Rick serves on both. He serves obviously here and serves with the Public Safety Commission, so I'm sure he will probably do a better job of keeping you apprised than I will, since he was obviously at that meeting too. Otherwise, like I said, I think we're on track. And glad it seemed like it's gotten better with this solving the southern route. And we've addressed the chief of police's biggest concern, really only concern. So
once these stops are identified, there may be some construction required.
yeah.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
with all of them, but with some of them.
well, construction required, a lot of them are right by sidewalks.
Right.
So, I don't know, if they're, he didn't mention it, if they're where current stop is, or student stop, then they're grandfathered in. So, so he didn't mention that, but that's.
Yeah, I've heard that before, though.
Yeah,
Right, so the combination of the grandfathering and the sidewalks.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be that many places where we would actually have to put something.
Okay. But they would have to be put in place before the bus could,
technically he told us no,
not yet,
no, I mean, they say you don't have to have them in, but priority is to get them eventually,
some level of commitment to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay,
so.
but there probably aren't that many that, and if we did do something, it would be like a pad or something like that.
That's what he was saying, like, I think there was something he mentioned, it was either on Owen or Pheasant Hill where there isn't a stop, where he mentioned putting a pad down.
Yeah,
Would probably be necessary.
Yeah, it's like a pad,
so it's not that big a deal.
yeah, they're not like, you don't have to put in like a structure,
Okay,
I mean, the structure's above and beyond what they require.
yeah. Eventually, the city may want to build structures to encourage more people to.
Yeah.
Right,
That's it.
but one of the things that Metro said, and I think the city concurs, is that they don't want us building a lot of infrastructure right away.
Right.
Because they may tweak
Things
it,
change.
right, they may change it, and so it would be, so they actually, well, I'm sure that it would be fine, if we did some infrastructure, obviously, and we need to do some infrastructure, they're not advocating for like, get it all done before we move, because or spend a ton of money before we move, because they could change.
Yeah, incrementally.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of it is just concrete pads, which are. Are doing, since.
Yeah,
So once we get the contract signed, will we wanna start building some kind of publicity campaign
Rather do some communication.
to let people know the bus is coming or changes are
And
coming?
Yeah.
some routines or something.
Because we wanna make sure it's successful.
yeah, what I would say is that. I don't know that it would be immediately after, because again, we're probably not gonna be seeing the buses until the end of the year.
Right.
And I, you know, as we've talked about before, I made sure that we made sure that the. Budget includes marketing, dollars, that's why we kept the budget, budgeted amount in the budget, the same as we have been doing for a student. And actually, one thing, okay, so, yeah, and so the whole idea is that, not unlike the survey that we did. Where we did a postcard to every household and where we cross-marketed, with VMO PSAs and. An article in the paper and like all kinds of other things to get the word out about the survey. I think it's gonna be really important to develop a full marketing plan over a period of months, to make sure that everybody understands not only when the change is happening, but also exactly how the bus is gonna run and all of that, and that obviously one of those things is gonna have to be updating. I have updating the FAQs again on my pile. And we're gonna have to update the whole website, so, yeah, Addie.
One other kind of related thing to the rollout is, have we notified First Student officially of our intent to cease our contract at some point? Or have we started, because I know we have a 6-month,
Yeah.
have we
I
started
talked
that?
to him. I talked to him, I'm just waiting for the official approval with our attorneys, to get the okay.
Okay, so that's in process.
They're
Good to
well
know.
aware
Thank
of
you.
it. They know it's coming.
Good. I
just-
didn't want that to come in at the last minute and they go,
No.
oh, well, yeah, we didn't send us a notarized letter, so we
No,
gotta
they
do
just
this for another
told us-
6 months or
They
something.
just told us what the date, they want to notify when the date is, so. So they will, and First Student will basically go over and do your senior care, or will be the
Paratransit.
paratransit from Madison Metro, so you'll probably have the same drivers.
Well, actually, I was gonna say, that was exactly where I was going a minute ago, where I stopped myself, like, if there was a way to talk to First Student. To say that we would love it if they wanted to have the drivers that people are so fond of in Monona. Working for Badger Bus that serves this side of the city. I'm sure the seniors would absolutely, our community would absolutely love it.
And
But-
related to that, do we have to wait until we've executed the contract with Madison Metro to start supporting seniors in filling out their applications for Madison Metro Paratransit? At what point can we launch that?
That'll be a follow-up question with Metro. I don't know that answer.
Okay, yeah, because if there's a delay, we kind of want, ideally to have the seniors who rely on paratransit services be ready on day one of the new Madison Metro service with their applications approved through paratransit, so they can start riding on that day.
Work out some kind of partnership with the senior center or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Diane's, I serve the senior center, I'm chair of the senior. Committee, and I know that we've talked about it in that committee, as well about, just wanting to be ready. When the time is right, my guess is that our attorneys are gonna wanna have the signed contract. And that contract, once it's. Their attorneys and our attorneys have gone through it, the contract actually has to go through the city council. For approval, I know that the mayor really wants to get it done by the end of the first quarter. That's why it's in process, and because it's gonna take 6 months after that before we see, before we can even start.
Yeah.
So, but my guess is they're gonna want it approved and signed before we engage paratransit. Cause Madison, I can imagine that Madison Transit Services is not gonna wanna see Monona seniors until they have a contract, but the senior center is very aware of it, as I said, we've talked about it, and there's some additional resources we may be able, there actually aren't that many. In terms of numbers, my sense is that there aren't that many seniors that are riding the lift now. As you can see from the numbers this month, actually. And so hopefully it won't be quite as hairy as some folks, were concerned about.
The goal is to have, like Nancy said, I mean, you should have it to council hopefully here in March and not past April, so. I mean, it's gonna go here fairly quick, and we'll contracts.
Anything else? Should we move on to 7B?
I don't have much for you.
Any big DI? I
No.
think this is a pretty big DEI.
It is.
It is.
It's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, and by the way.
That
this is
agenda item is always on our agenda under new business.
Yeah,
Should it be, if we're gonna keep having it on there, shouldn't it be under unfinished business?
Perpetually
Continuing business.
yeah.
Yeah, we can move it.
And you know what, by the way, this is just another little data point, but I know we always think about Monona residents. Although we've talked about both. Our first thought is to think about this community going out, using the bus to go out. And we've said all along that is also about people coming to Monona and needing to come, like that's one of the reasons why Ella Leopold is so excited as an example about this, because in other businesses, we just got, through the city contact form. Like within the last couple of weeks, we just got a contact from someone who's disabled and works in Monona. And he was writing to ask if, in fact, we would have stops on Monona Drive. Finally, because he works in Monona and he has to take the bus, and he has been taking the bus into Monona for his employment and walking 3/4 of a mile.
There you
To get to
go.
his employer as a disabled person,
There you
and
go.
when I told him that we would in fact be having stops on Monona Drive, he was very excited. And said, well, it's gonna be really great for businesses in Monona too, I know other people that come from and work, in Monona that haven't been able to get here very easily, so.
And employers who are looking for employees.
Employees, yeah, so. Great. So with that, unless we have any other questions, I do believe I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Seconds, I have a second, I have a motion, all those in favor say aye, thank you all again very much,
Hi,
Aye.
have a good evening.
you too.
Now, enjoy the rest of your time in Arizona, Eddie.
thanks so much.